so I know anything about that. I'm just curious. Since it was all a spoken culture, or however, whatever that word is there any possibility that the creation story was the first story, but it just hadn't been written down?
It's really unlikely. I mean, you can't give those kind of things percentages, but nobody, no serious scholars are going to put that forth because there's no way to prove it. And there seems like a lot of things that disprove it. For example, like the way people spoke Hebrew in 500-600 BC was way different than the way they spoke Hebrew, at 2400 BC. The language changes.
Well, I understand, but I'm just saying that obviously if I tell a story that you wrote, I'm going to use my words, but I'm just saying the idea of the story, is there any way that the story still could have originated?
Yeah. It's unlikely
instead of been a criticism.
It's unlikely.
Yeah,
I get what you mean.
And they reaffirmed.
It's unlikely because of when the Enuma Elish was written. So it's written at 1800. The Hebrew people are already writing everything down by 1,000 at least. So if they were going to write something down, they probably would have written it down then-ish if it was oral. Like if it was stories, they probably would have written it down around 1,000-ish. And if the Enuma Elish, which was written down at 1800, was a problem for the Hebrew people that they felt they needed to respond to, then they probably would have fixed it around the same time. That would have been the time for their literary response. Now those things are all conjecture, but that's kind of where our best evidence points us. It feels like it takes a bigger leap of faith to believe the other one with no real payoff.
I guess what I'm getting from what you're saying is that we have to go first. Before we can change chaos, we have to change ourselves through our shadowing first, because we can't teach. That's why I'm coming to you to ask you is how do I teach this to the students I have, because I'm a teacher. How do I teach what I want to, express to my students about God when you can't do that in the schools anyways? But first I had to come comfortable with who I was, and I think that's some of the problem with all our chaos right now is that people are not comfortable with who they are, because do they truly believe in Christ themselves? I guess that's what I'm taking from what you are saying.
There's two sides to that coin. On the one hand, you can't just run around and point the finger and hey, that's awful, and especially when your own life's a mess. But on the other end of that, though, I think oftentimes we get almost paralyzed by our sense of inadequacy, and we think, well, I'm not totally sorted out, so I don't have a voice then to help sort other things out. But we're all works in progress. We're all broken. We're in the midst of setting things back to rights, even though not everything is right with us. But it's never going to be fully right with us anyway, so you kind of have to do both and as you journey together doing them. So yes, you're right. You got to look at yourself. Absolutely. But yes, also there's that other part where you go, you can't just worry about yourself because you're never going to figure it all out anyway. The best you can do is be open about your shortcomings and work towards things as best you understand them. Yeah. Does that feel like a...
Yeah, I don't know, I just find sometimes that, everybody you yourself, like you said, you become paralyzed with your beliefs, and sometimes people are afraid to admit that, they give their life to God or what, they believe in God or whatever. That's just it's like sometimes we play like a game of charades in our life, so I guess that's what I'm just trying to, from what you're saying, everything was different. Well, everything is different. Everything is going to be different. We just have to know how to deal with it, and then try to do what we can to make things right too, through His Word.
No, I am wondering, in this series, as you're using our call to shadow God, is that separate or the same as our call to believe in Jesus? I don't mean that to diminish that, but as Jesus says, you have to trust in me. So is this like what happens after you know Jesus, or anyone can shadow God? How are you using that language?
I think the quickest synonym is sanctification. Shadowing God is sanctification. Because shadowing God is our easy way, like our normal people understand way to talk about theosis, which is sanctification, almost exactly. So that's what we mean. So in terms of like, when do you start shadowing God? Is shadowing God more important than professing faith in Jesus? In my mind, it's all the same thing on the same continuum. The people who are shadowing God are people who are following Jesus, because where he goes, you go. And whether you describe yourself as a shadow or a follower, it's the same thing. But it has that movement to it, which is why we like the language. But in strict terms, it's sanctification. Is what we're talking about. With probably some parts that that 50 years ago we weren't thinking about sanctification in terms of ecology or culture. We were just thinking in terms of not swearing or whatever.
Then my suggestion would be on it, like if you were a non-believer coming in today, I know you, I know what we're singing about, but I think it could be beneficial to somehow bring Jesus into that process as you're talking about that language.
Yeah.
Just so when they walk out of here, they know that what's different about us is we want to shadow God through the person of Jesus. Not just shadow God as in, the almighty power.
Yeah.
Because I know that's what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great ad. I think last week we did a better job of making sure Jesus was more central.
I do all the time.
I don't hear you being critical.
Yeah.
I'm thinking out loud. So that's
like
good to
today
know.
on the 8:30, I would just say if I walked out here, I can still believe that.
That's a good ad.
So, but I think it's really hard because it's our foundation of presupposition.
Right.
We don't always
Oh, that's good.
feel like we have to Jesus.
That's okay. I don't feel.
You know what I mean?
I'm not scared of over Jesusing.
Yeah. So I don't know.
No, that's good.
Be my own.
That's a good ad. That's good. Okay. Anything else? Are we good? Yeah. The young fellow I was just talking to was saying that in his Western civilization class at Albion or Hillsdale College, that they're doing the Enuma Elish right now. And he was saying they were comparing it with Genesis 1, and that his prof was using it to sort of discredit Genesis 1. So he was blown away. He was like, I can't believe I came here today. He's just visiting, because this is awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's fortunate, yeah. So that was neat. A lot of the things that we really believe so strongly at Westlands that sound so different to people are traced back to this. Like when we talk a lot, instead of talking just about salvation, when we talk instead about living differently and loving the world and helping the world, all that comes back to this. And for a lot of people, they can't put their finger on why Westlands theologically feels so different, but not wrong, but definitely feels different. And this is really the starting point. So it feels good to be able to articulate it and lay it out.
So I have a couple people I'm trying to get to come, not for any other agenda except, I think I told you, they kind of crave more than just finding the same sermon, the same stuff. I'm not certain what the hesitancy is, but I haven't taken the time to look on the website. Is there someone I can say, why don't you look at that and you can see what's been talked? Is a sermon on that?
Yeah. You can on that not the end .info. It's on the cover of the bulletin.
Okay, not the end.info.
Yeah. And there's everything there, including if they were so ambitious, they could download the teaching atlas for free, so they didn't have to pay for it, and kind of read everything, and all the slides, all the prayers that would use Infusion are all there.
So for me, I can just say, why don't you go there and just test the water.
Yep, absolutely.